Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Joint webinar hosted by Zementum with Total Growth Ownership. Delighted to have Matt Hodgkinson joining me today. Interesting job title, Chief Mescapologist. All will become clear shortly. So today's topic, six-pronged technique to enhance your MSP positioning. Matt's going to be talking to us all about how to differentiate your MSP or IT business in what is really a very crowded marketplace. Matt, thank you for joining me. Would you like to give us all a bit of an intro?
Thank you, Ben, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. It's great to be with you and with Zementum for this session. I did a panel session with Zementum last year, which some of you may have been at, on the topic of differentiation. And I'm expanding on all of that today, really, by discussing my own six-pronged technique to enhance your MSP positioning. So, Ben, should we get straight into it?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of housekeeping. Chat is open, Q&A is open. Please don't feel you have to wait till the end to ask any questions. Jump in on either forum along the way. I will rudely interrupt Matt with any questions, however good or bad, as we go along. If you've got any questions for myself as well, feel free to ask away. But primarily, Matt's going to be driving this one. It's his topic. I am not a marketologist myself, so I defer to his expertise.
I think that your use of the word marketologist would suggest otherwise, Ben. Okay, let's get into it then. I will say this is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour across a number of factors that I know from research and experience that you need to build into your market positioning if you're going to generate attention for your business right now. I'll talk about why that's a particular issue in the current environment. It's not going to change anytime soon, let's face it. And I will become clear on things like my job title and much, much more. So, but first, I want to give you a very warm welcome and thanks for taking time out of your Star Wars day to be with me. I know we've got some techies here, so there's bound to be some Star Wars fans. And so there we go. That said, I'm low on fluff. I love to get to the meat of these things. When I'm sitting on a webinar, the last thing I want to hear about is all and sundry about the speaker and their background and you know what's brought them to this point and everything else. So I'll keep it nice and light. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can do your research, and that's the way to get to know me. But just to say, I spent 18 years as an IT consultant myself across a variety of different industries and with some big clients like Sky, Marks and Spencer, O2. So I've been there and done it. I've sat in those cold server rooms, website testing, performance testing, plugging straight into the blades as it was back then, and all of that jazz. And latterly, my second career has been marketing for the last 13 years. I built and sold one agency, and now I help MSPs and other B2B consultancies to achieve full differentiation so that they can break through the noise and generate the attention that they deserve and crave. And that's about as much as I'm going to say about me. But I will say, Chief Mescapologist, to give it its proper name, what I'm in the business of is escaping me and helping our clients to do the same. When people see your value proposition, when they visit your website, when they hear your pitch, that's the last response you want is yeah, I've just spoke to 10 of those, you know, you're just another one, another face in the crowd. That's the last thing we want. So that's where the job title comes from. Okay, why else should you listen to me? Well, after I escaped the clutches of the IT consultancy world, I have worked with a number of MSPs along the way. Over 200 MSPs, technologists, and other consultancies to help them to build a competitionless position in their market, no matter what the market conditions. And generally, the reason why we don't collectively meet our goals when it comes to new business, sales, lead generation, generating the opportunities in the pipeline that we so desperately need for our business, it doesn't tend to be about the channel. It does, and when I say channel, I mean the marketing channel. It's not that email is dead. It's not that telesales is dead. It's not that LinkedIn is dead or overwrought with people who are just vying for our attention in our DMs. And I'll talk a lot about that today. It's about the message that you're putting out into the world. In 99% plus of cases, it's that the message you're putting out isn't worthy of attention or response. And I'll talk a bit about the challenges around that. But I've noticed it's particularly rife in the hyper-competitive environment that is the MSP world. So we've worked with a number of clients in that space. We've helped them. They have transformed their fortunes. You'll be very, very glad to hear. It is possible. And today, my job is to help to move you forward in your journey, to give you a number of actions that you can take to help to better differentiate yourself and earn and retain the attention of great fit prospects that you can do your best work with. But first, let's bring the energy down slightly and talk about the problems that exist. Why is this such a big problem for MSPs right now? Well, there are three huge problems that you face as things stand. The first is what I call sameism. It's the feeling that you look and sound a bit like everybody else in your space, in your category. I play this game quite often. Any of you who have heard me speak before may have done this test and heard me speak about this website test. And the job is, I want you to, at some point, not right now, go and visit one or two of your competitors. Go to their websites. If you are savvy with Canva or Photoshop or something like that, you might actually want to literally do this. If not, just imagine replacing their logo with yours. Do the key headlines and core messaging still make sense? Does what's being described on screen, could it describe your business as well as it could your competitor? If it could, then the chances are that you are not differentiated in any way and that you are going to fall under the pressures that come with that in the marketplace. This is why we get seen as commodities. It's why people make pricing-based decisions. If we're equated to somebody else, then all of the baggage that comes with those other businesses comes with that as well. So for example, you tell me that you do IT support, that you do managed services. I'm going to call back into my mind and I'm going to say on receipt of that information, I'm going to try and equate you to somebody that I know, somebody I'm familiar with. Now, I might have an incumbent supplier. I might have worked with an IT supplier in the past, and all of the experiences that I had with that supplier, I'm going to dump on you. That's what you are, because that's the way that you've described yourself. So anything around pricing, anything around the experience, anything around the contractual terms and how long I'm tied in for, all of that stuff is going to be dumped on you because of the way that you describe yourself. Language, perception is massively important in marketing and in sales and in your general market position. I've put the Microsoft Partners logo there because there are round about, at last count, 65,000 Microsoft partners in the world. We could differentiate each and every one of them based on the 6.5 factors that I'm going to talk about today. That's the power of differentiation. And I'm going to show you some of the ways in which you can do that practically. The second challenge is what I call messaging. So a little bit different. It's not necessarily the amount of sameism that people equate to you, but it's just the use of bland, boring, overused, run-of-the-mill language to describe your value proposition, the value that you bring, the outcomes that you generate, and the experience of working with you as well. It's uninspiring, doesn't deserve to capture any sort of attention, and it's never been a noisier space out there. And I know everybody talks about this. That in itself is overused language, I know. But the fact is that more people have flocked to LinkedIn, especially since the pandemic. The visitor numbers when the first lockdown happened, and when all of those trade shows and events and networking events got cancelled, visitation to LinkedIn increased by 20-fold, pretty much overnight. And it hasn't really abated since then. People are seeing LinkedIn and other B2B social environments and online as a massive opportunity to connect with their audience. But for the most part, people are doing it wrong, and they are making massive mistakes in burning bridges with their potential clients. Generally speaking, it's because of their own messaging. They're not inspiring a response. I'm sure you all get them. Listen, I want to make this as interactive as I can. If you've received a really uninspiring connection request with a pitch for business in the last few days, just pop in the chat for me, a big old yes, if that's happened to you. I get them on a daily basis, the countless of them, in fact, people saying, I want to connect based on some tenuous reason. Here's what we do. Do you want to book a call? Yes, heck yes. Thank you, Nate. Eric,
Yeah,
yes, as well.
Variety of honest people.
I knew that was going to be the case, of course, yeah.
Weirdly, I think we might have 3 or 4 people that have all joined using Eric Wheeler's link.
Well, that is the definition of sameism right now. They've even got the same name as you, Eric. But we'll look out for that.
If you have joined and your screen is telling you your name is Eric Wheeler, perhaps you can rename yourself on Zoom. Because this is really confusing.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll leave you to that, but we'll crack on. The third pain that we're looking to fix here is tumbleweed outreach. Do you ever get that feeling that when you send your own messaging out, you might have used cold email, you might have even used warm email, where you've generated leads, and then you're trying to start a conversation to get those prospects to the next stage of the journey with you, and yet it just falls on deaf ears. You don't generate the response that you were hoping for. Well, that's what I call tumbleweed outreach. You might know it as ghosting, but again, we use different language. It's about saying something different to pique attention. Tumbleweed outreach is a really big issue. Why should people respond to you? Really ask yourself that question. There are really simple things, like imagining that you are face-to-face with a human being. I know that a lot of people will say, hi, Nate, did you know that 70% of businesses are going to fail by the time they get to the 5th year, and yada, 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 yada. You wouldn't start a conversation like that if somebody was face-to-face with you. You'd get into a bit of a cadence of, speak and respond, speak and respond. Get into a dialogue before you start spouting statistics at somebody, and certainly before you pitch any sort of business to them, and definitely before you send them a meeting link to put some time on your calendar. It's not right. You're absolutely right, Nate. Number one rule for cold outreach, be normal. If you have to do cold outreach, of course. But yes, absolutely right. So those are the 3 pains. That's about as low as we're going to go. Now I want to talk about solutions. So I'm going to provide you with the 6 ways, the 6 prongs, if you like, to fix these problems. And I'm going to throw in half a prong as well, just to kind of add the secret sauce at the very end. So do stick with us to the end so that you get the full benefit. Right. Prong number 1. I want you to occupy a different category. I said earlier on, when you refer to yourself in a certain way, when you say to people, I provide IT support, we're a managed services company, whatever it might be, if there are several others in your space who are all saying the same thing, then again, you're going to inherit that baggage, you're going to be equated to what everybody else is doing, and you're not giving anybody a compelling reason to consider you in any different a way. So we need to separate yourself from competitors by using language that's going to change their perception, flip their understanding of what you do, and so that you can occupy this space as the world's only at what you do. We're talking about category ownership. This isn't about category creation. I'm not saying you're going to be the next Airbnb or the next Uber. It's about category ownership, using language to describe yourself in different ways. And this is accounting for the part of the brain that needs to know that yours is a different proposition. Different is better than better. We are pre-programmed as human beings. It was baked into us way back when we had to spot the saber-toothed tiger in the long grass. We are pre-programmed to spot what is different, to give that our attention. Okay, it's the whole kind of fight or flight. I'm no psychologist, but I know that this stuff works. I was on a tube train recently on the London Underground, and what tends to happen in London is that everybody wears the city uniform, which is a dark grey or black coat over the top of anything they might be wearing. Everybody blends in. There was a guy sitting a few seats away, Now, I don't think he'd just come out of a nightclub. It wasn't that time of day. I don't think he was on the way to a nightclub either, because it wasn't nighttime yet. But he was wearing what can only be described as a crow feather jacket. I mean, it was quite impressive. Aside of the fact that it was impressive, it was different. He stood out. He got my attention. And we have to do the same with the language that we use. And the reason we need to do this is because the part of the brain, the amygdala, I call it the BS filter. That's the bit that tells you whether you need to pay attention to something, whether it's worthy of your attention. And it's asking all the time, have I heard or seen something like this before? It's what keeps you safe. It's that part of the brain that stops you from making poor decisions. What is different gets noticed, what stands out from the white noise. So how do you become the only, or the one and only, as Chesney Hawkes would say? And I'm guessing we've got a few dialing in from the States, and you probably won't know who Chesney Hawkes is at all, but he sang the one and only, didn't he, Ben? I mean, this guy, he had a bit of a one-hit wonder over here in the UK.
Possibly a little before my time.
Throw that one in. Okay, I'm showing my age there. Anyway, old or common language won't cut it. So I want to give you an example. We worked with an innovation consultancy called Future Foundry. Now, they could have told everybody that they provide an innovation service or that they're an innovation consultancy. And up to that point, that's exactly what they were saying. But it wasn't cutting through the noise. It wasn't generating the attention that they craved. So after we worked with them on their category ownership piece, this is what we initially came up with. They've worked on another iteration based on the validation they've done since, but they became the world's only corporate innovation engine. Incredibly easy to validate some of the language that you're looking to incorporate when you're coming up with your own category language. Just do a simple Google search. Is anybody using that language already? If it doesn't exist on Google, to my mind, it doesn't exist. They're great at indexing pretty much everything in the world, including some of your conversations you're having within earshot of your Google Home, I'm sure, but I won't get into that. The result is a far more enthusiastic response when you refer to what you do. The intrigue levels are peaked and people just can't unhear what they've just unheard or unseen. If they're visiting your website, they need to know more. And that's the response that we wish to generate. So I'll talk to you about some of the kind of actions and how to achieve some of this a bit later on. Second up, a different mechanism. There is a part of us as buyers, and you will have it when you're considering solutions and products, that needs to know that there is a proven system, that there is a process for delivering the transformation that you do. So your unique mechanism, it's a proven process. It's a tangible visual representation of the transformation you deliver as well. And it's your unified value. What is it that you are going to take your client on the journey of? What does this future Nirvana-like existence look like after they work with you? This is an example. It's a linear example. So this would be representative of a project piece of work, for example, if you just went in to do like a fixed cost project. And so it takes your buyer from over this side on the left, being in this painful, challenge-ridden situation. They've got a challenge that they can't solve for themselves, and this is what they need your help for. And they want to get to this future state where that challenge doesn't exist anymore, where they are optimal, where they're firing on all cylinders and achieving everything they set out for themselves. Now, in the middle, there's a bunch of obstacles that they have to get over. And that's where your process comes in. Your process is the formidable way to get over those obstacles. And it goes step by step. So this is an example: divulge, develop, deliver, detect, and delight. So this might describe a typical kind of project management where there's an initial bit of kind of discovery, followed by some strategy and some planning, followed by some delivery, followed by some QA and some testing. And then there's some ongoing kind of maintenance to make sure that everything is hunky-dory, maybe some training as well. And what I'd encourage you to do when you're creating your own unique mechanism, or you might already have one, make sure it has an identity. In this instance, the delight framework, something that's memorable, in addition to the fact that, I haven't been backwards in coming forwards with the alliteration here. Love a bit of alliteration when it comes to these processes, only if it makes sense. It can't be kind of manufactured. If it feels like it's been wedged in, then the prospect's going to pick up on that. So do consider that. Linear processes aren't the only way. Had a bit of a formatting issue here. It's become a triangle, but it's supposed to be like a cyclical, unique mechanism. And this is going to represent a lot of the managed services you provide. You're going to be working with these clients for many, many years, hopefully. So when it is a recurring revenue proposition, what is the process? How does it loop back and repeat? Again, perhaps there's an evaluation step. There's a planning and strategy, forecasting step. There's an implementation and testing. And then maybe it repeats. You go back to evaluate what needs have occurred since the last time we ran these checks, what additional staff have joined, new teams, new products and capabilities, what needs to be accounted for. And you repeat and you repeat and you repeat. And that's the way of delivering cyclical transformation. So the first sort of action step, I'm going to challenge you to create your own. If you don't have one already, a unique mechanism, create, develop, or jazz up your own. The concept doesn't have to be different, but it has to feel individual. And this is where this process can differentiate you from any other, for example, if you are a Microsoft partner, from the 65,000 others in the world. Your process for delivery is unique to you. I've yet to meet two businesses that deliver a transformation, a service, a solution in the same way. And the way that you refer to it, the way that you structure it, is entirely yours. And then once you've crafted it, once you've done the back of a fag packet stuff, then go to a designer on things like 99 Designs, Upwork, and get that visual created. It's a fantastic sales tool as well to communicate to prospects exactly what they can expect in terms of that transformation you deliver. A little pause there. And any questions, as Ben says, do feel free to jump in and we'll pick them up as we go. Next up, the third prong, a different language. Now, we've established new language to describe our category. There are many different facets to your business that we can use our what we call a language library to describe. So if you're going to avoid sounding like your competitors, when this comes to your webinars, when it comes to your pitches, when it comes to just being in conversation with prospects, then new terminology to describe everything in your business, whether that's the challenges that you help to solve, whether it's the solutions, your marketing collateral and assets, or even your people. I'm a mescapologist. I could be a founder and chief exec, but I mean, that's a bit meh. It's just like everybody else. And also it makes me a target on LinkedIn for anybody that's trying to sell me stuff. Chief mescapologist just sounds a little bit different. Again, piques intrigue, as it clearly did at the beginning of this call for some. So new language. For example, again, so project turnaround, this would be a solution. Now, we worked with a client who operates in the Agile and Scrum space, project management, and they were pitching this idea of project turnaround as a solution that they offered. Feedback that they got was that was a very negative term. People don't like to hear that their baby's ugly. So project turnaround implies that their project is so screwed up that it needs turning around. If you equated that to business turnaround, which is a common term, then that's typically a distressed business that's in trouble and needs some real serious help. So that was the connotation, that was the perception their language was creating. It's now coined delivery optimization. We flicked it, we made it more of a positive intonation, but also there's enough intrigue in this. People don't use this terminology. Again, it was near zero Google results, certainly in the context of what this company did. And so people are going to want to know more about that. And that's when you get the response. It's when you generate the attention, the response comes after that, and then you can get into a conversation.
And I love the Michelle Visage reference there. I wonder how many drag race fans we have in our audience. Probably not many.
You could even apply delivery optimization to some of the performances on Drag Race as well, I'm sure. So it's multifaceted, that one. So it's action time again. I want to give you this very, very simple framework. You can take some of these examples by all means. The crucial part of this is about going from what is overused, ubiquitous, run-of-the-mill language and getting to a much, much better alternative. Now, a staged approach might work best. It's a bit much to think of that overused language and suddenly just think of something which is ultimately way, way better. We may have to go through this process of overused to okay, to better, to best. And here are some examples of where we've done that. So first off, with the category, we worked with a client in cybersecurity. As you will all know, no doubt, one of the most overused terms, along with digital transformation, that there is out in the world at the moment. We decided an okay alternative was threat detection. But again, there's so many companies using that terminology, and it's a bit more specific. In terms of this client and what they provided, it was relevant, but it just wasn't there yet because it's still overused. Threat intelligence, slightly better because it implies a more proactive approach to those threats and cybersecurity, but it's still used by quite a few companies, and a growing number, in fact. The best, a potential new category, was threat immunity. Not in use at the time of writing. I think there's a few that have jumped on the bandwagon since. So that's an important point, because a few of our clients have trademarked their new terminology, their new category, and a lot of their wider language. And that prevents new entrants into that market from using your terminology. Threat immunity, I know it carries a bunch of connotations. The client was actually quite reticent because they thought, well, we can never make you immune. But as we've learned anything, during the pandemic, immunity has its degrees of efficacy. So, and it can be explained. What's more important is it's going to generate the attention, and it is explainable once you're in the conversation, but at least you're in the conversation. And that's what we're looking to generate here. There are a few more examples there. The challenge language as well. So things like fearing a data breach and a regulatory fine, which we term to be breach fear, a better alternative, data breach despair, and then the best alternative, the data apathy trap. And people need to know what that is all about, of course. So all of this has been kind of validated, and you need to go out to market to prove it. The response is the important thing. Once you've generated that, you're in, and you can start to use it. And do consider that kind of trademark angle to protect what you've got as well. Okay, a different experience. So there are a whole bunch of competitors out there, as we've established. And if you are going to guarantee a yes for your services, which we want you to do, then you're going to have to invalidate every other solution on the table. Now, if you don't, then the buyer might be thinking, well, there are other ways to do this. I'm still considering that one or that one. And if you don't switch off the buyer to those options, then, and they won't always state that they're considering them, of course, then that will result in a big objection your way. So every buyer that you deal with has this kind of crossroads or a fork in the road as part of their journey with you. It gets to crunch time. They can either go with you or they can go the other route. We have to paint that route as the lightning strikes, the terrible weather, the brambles, the jagged rocks, everything else that comes with it. And our route is the only one that's going to give them that real kind of sunshine experience, happy days. That's what we need to establish. Now, in addition to invalidating everybody else on the market, and I'll talk about how you do that, we also have to invalidate two things that are open to the buyer at all times. One is that they try and do it themselves. I mean, come across countless clients that have tried to do that, I'm sure, as well as, which is equivalent of this, hiring in perhaps a CTO or somebody who they think can manage their technology. And the other option is that they can do nothing. We're human beings, and much like we're pre-programmed to recognize the thing that is different, we're also pre-programmed to take the path of least resistance, which in many cases is to just not decide. You've told me what you're going to do for me. You've pitched it. You've given me your proposal. Still seems like a big jump for me, especially if I've got to leave my incumbent supplier who, yeah, we have a few problems with, but they're a known entity. Better the devil you know and all that. So we have to compel them to make that change. So this invalidation process must not be a smear exercise. You can't name competitors one by one and just tell people you don't want to work with them because, oh, that job they did, that breach, and they dealt with it really bad. Months later, their client was still paying for it. And you can't badmouth people as part of this. It's about invalidating categories of alternative solution. So look at direct competitors and use that as a category to invalidate. Look at perhaps AI solutions, for example. Here's a reason not to go down that route. Hire your own CTO. Here are some reasons why that's, it's expensive. You have to train them. They're going to take months to really get up to speed and ingratiate themselves in your culture. Will they gel with you? You've got to go through the whole recruitment process. There's a war on talent. So, I mean, are there even any proper CTOs available? Whole bunch of great invalidation statements for that particular option. Arm yourself with those statements for when you get to the crunch time so that you can switch off the buyer to those options. Prong number 5, a different result. We have to communicate to the buyer that they are going to receive something tangible, or that you're going to move a needle for them. You're going to improve a metric, ideally within the first 90 days. We've done the research. This is about as far forward as a prospect can think before it screams commitment. And yes, we know that you want to be working with your clients for many, many years, ideally, and to increase the lifetime value of that relationship. But to the buyer, they have to see and feel that they're going to receive something in those first 90 days. Now, in the tangible stakes, that could, for example, be the results of an IT audit. You could have done a big sweep of their systems, identified some frailties, some opportunities, and reported on that, give it to them maybe in 7 or 14 days or 30 days. So long as it's within those 90, that's going to be perceived really, really well by that prospect. The other aspects, as I say, you could move a needle. So you could say, for example, you're going to implement a system that's going to reduce the number of manual hours of processing by 40 a week, for example. And then you can associate a cost to that, by looking at the average cost of employment and what have you. The reason we do this is so that we can deflate the sense of commitment to the buyer so that they're more comfortable getting into bed with you, and that we can increase confidence early, that we can reaffirm the decision that they've made to trust in you, and it's going to set the tone for a very, very successful relationship going forward. Okay.
I was going to say, we had a question from Eric. It sort of related back to the terminology grid you'd shown.
Oh.
What's another good saying for "we're an extension of your team"? Absolutely hate that, by the way. Yeah,
that's a really great and specific example, Eric. Whichever Eric you are, I think we've lost a couple of Erics, so that's good to see.
We've gone from 4 to 3.
We're an extension of your team. So a good example of this might be that you say that you are the fractional CTO. We've seen that a few times. It's not a new idea, but it might be different in the context of the buyers that you deal with. So rather than we're an extension of your team, you are going to place that capability of fractional CTO into their business. It gives them a sense that they're dealing with an expert, that they're not just going to inherit a bunch of doers, but they're getting a proactive approach into the bargain. Somebody who's a strategic thinker and is going to guide the direction of their technological journey rather than just kind of fix things and, break fix and just kind of guide them in that sort of journey. So that's one example. With a bit more time, we could probably come up with some other alternatives. And if anybody else on the webinar would like to suggest some alternatives to Eric, then please jump into the chat and make some suggestions. If you feel like not stealing it for yourself, that is. Okay, prong number 6, a different risk. So we still, after all of these other prongs, might experience a bit of friction simply because the buyer feels there's a lot of risk in this deal. The risk of jumping ship from their incumbent, which, let's face it, is the situation a lot of the time for you guys. The risk of buying into somebody who they haven't worked with before, who might not understand their business, even though they say they do. And they might find themselves months down the line working with somebody who just demonstrates the same challenges and problems that they've encountered before. And it's not just the loss of the investment and money during that time, it's the loss of time just to end up back at square one. So all of this is playing on their mind. So we need to remove the perception of risk in the buyer's mind. It might be a guarantee for some or all of the work. And I know that there's a lot of reticence to guarantee, but if you place the right conditions on those guarantees, or if you use the right terminology and language to structure what exactly is going on in this guarantee, then you can make sure that you're protected, that neither you or the client are going to miss out financially when it comes to this. And you have to recognize that nobody wants a refund. And you don't have to offer a refund to offer a guarantee, by the way. But also, they want the result much more than they want the refund or whatever other recompense there might be under the conditions of that guarantee. So recognize that. And also you can do things like, so an example of a non-refund guarantee might be that you will work for free until a particular outcome is achieved, for example. So if it's not met within a particular time scale, if there are some unforeseen circumstances, you'll work for free until the outcome is achieved. We talked about the quantifiable result earlier on, something you can deliver within 90 days. That's the perfect asset that you can guarantee. It means that you're not on the hook to guarantee the entire engagement. So that guarantee doesn't stand in like 10 years' time. You won't have to refund them all of their fees up to that point, for example. You can just perhaps put a guarantee around your IT audit or an initial workshop that you're going to present with them. Whatever it might be, again, just to cement the idea that they have made a great decision buying into you. For us at TGO, we have our Lego firewalk guarantee. If you wouldn't walk barefoot over loose Lego bricks to keep hold of what we deliver in terms of your differentiated position, then we refund you in full. And there are some conditions around that, of course, because our clients have a say in all of this. They have a really big stake in their own market positioning, as you can appreciate. They have to take action on it as well. But with all those conditions in place, we are still, happy to back ourselves.
Has anyone ever asked for it?
No, not today. We haven't effected one to date. And what we have to be careful of is that idea that clients can get away with not taking action. If they take action, they get the result every single time. And that's the reason why we can be comfortable enough to provide that. So I promised you a little additional bit. So here's half a prong for you, and it's a different cause. Now, this can be incredibly, incredibly powerful when it comes to positioning your business. And it's a really, really simple concept. What do you, as either an individual or as a business, ideally, stand really strongly for or strongly against? So, for example, and I get as a concept, that sounds like, it's a real rallying cry. It's an important thing. We all have a cause in business. It could be described as your why. I mean, for us, we stand against anybody who's doing that automated mass cold outreach. And cold outreach in itself isn't a bad thing. Again, if you get the messaging right and if there's true value in what you're offering. What I'm talking about is the mass outreach using that automated technology. There are products that do this on LinkedIn, for example. There are products that do via email. And all you end up with in terms of personalization is your name. So, hi, Matt, rather than hi there or whatever it might be. And nothing else about that message is really about me. It's about their proposition. That's what we stand against. So those messages that don't deserve a response, as I've been saying. What do you stand for or against? I'd be really keen to know. And if you know what that is, if there is something in your industry that you are really, really compelled to rally against or for, again, jump in the chat. Tell me, what is it? What is your rallying cry? What is the thing that really kind of grinds your gears, for example? That would be something that you stand against, or something that you feel really passionately about that is a massive change or is a new way of doing work in your sector. I'd love to hear about those examples in the chat again, if you're willing to share. And I thought I'd incorporate a bit of Zementum speak into this because I feel like you haven't been represented, Ben, just yet. But
I gave Matt one job here, which was to awkwardly shoehorn as a brief Zementum pitch somewhere into his presentation, so that
it was seamless. It was seamless, and you didn't have to out it that way, Ben. But for example, here's a bit of a rallying cry. Can you really claim to be a leader in technology if your own sales experience isn't optimized and isn't technology-led? So being congruent with what you tell your clients, actually eating your own dog food, as we call it in the marketing space. Are you doing that? Let me just I'm going to jump in the chat just briefly.
I was saying, and I think quite specifically here on the sales piece, your sales process is your first touch point with your clients. And if you're promising to deliver technological enablement and to drive their businesses forward using technology, and you send them PDF proposals and mismatch things and email, it just starts to look sloppy. And if you can't demonstrate that you can get your own shit together, why are they going to trust you to get their shit together?
Exactly right. Well said, Ben. I want to jump into some of these examples. Eric, you stand for cold calling. It is not dead. Stand against LinkedIn messages or email blasts. I get that. I think cold calling, again, none of these channels are dead. As I said at the top of the call, it's really about that message. If you can add value, if you can compel people to pay attention to you and respond, fantastic. Ari, against long-term contracts. It's a fantastic example, and it's something that we've deployed in our own business when we've worked with clients on an MRR basis. Monthly rolling contract. If it's not working for you, it's not working for us. Why should you spend another 11, 10, 9 months working with us if it's not working? It just doesn't make any sense. When vendors use scare tactics against that, of course, Eric, yeah, absolutely. It's there's a lot of pressure, obviously, and they love to filter that down onto their channel partners sometimes. It can be a bit of an issue. And you're absolutely right to stand against that. There's some really good examples there. Clearly, I think this is going to be an exercise that's going to benefit a lot of you. What I'd encourage you to do is put it into your messages, put it into your core headlines, sing it out to the world, because if you're feeling that way, the chances are a lot of people are going to resonate with it. And that's what's going to generate real attention and connection with you, real resonance. People will happily get into conversation with people who they can really kind of vibe with. And that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so I want to wrap things up for now before I get into the next few slides, just by saying all of this theory without action isn't going to move you forward. So these are the 6.5 actions I'd recommend you take next. First up, take ownership of that new category. What can you use in terms of language to refer to your service that just separates you from anybody else in your space? And when you answer that question, what do you do at a networking event or in, around the dining table, whatever it might be, that you're not just kind of having the person look over your shoulder for the next one and say, oh yeah, I've just met another 10 of those. Great, another one. Second up, craft your unique mechanism. How do you deliver the transformation that you do? What's your unique way of confirming what the process is to escape the obstacles that your clients face? Build a language library. What's the wider vocabulary to describe the various aspects of your business, your people, the challenges that you help to solve, the solutions themselves, your marketing assets? You'll see an example of this shortly, and I'll call back to it when we get there, about naming some of the assets you use in your sales journey. Invalidate all alternative solutions. List them all out, direct, indirect, doing nothing, and also trying to do it themselves. Have some invalidation statements to hand so that you can call them up and head off any objections before they get spoken about, or even if they do get spoken about. Define your quantifiable result. What can you deliver, ideally within 90 days, of great value or that moves a needle, that means something to your prospects? Lower the perceived risk. If you can guarantee some or all of what you deliver to your clients, that's a fantastic position to be in. You don't necessarily need to lead with it. It doesn't need to be in your ads and in your headlines and messages or even in your pitch. But when you get to that stage of the sales journey, it might be the thing that just differentiates you in the absence of a guarantee from any competitors and get you the business over them. And then lastly, what do you stand for or against? You've demonstrated that you can do this, guys. So please just find that rallying cry. What is your cause behind everything that you're doing? Cheap plug right now. If you do have the ability to do a little scan, then please do. This is only a couple of weeks old. It's been on Amazon since the 18th of April. My first book, Mescapology. And it outlines the process that we've discussed today in a lot more detail, some practical examples, and it will help you to craft that unique position in your marketplace, help you to put together some better language, to craft your unique mechanism and all the component parts of this unturned downable offer. I don't doubt it's going to be a massive help to you. So, and if you do happen to purchase it, and if it does add value, then I'd be grateful of any reviews that you might leave on Amazon. And do get in touch. I'd love to hear from anybody that's getting value from the stuff that I'm putting out there. There's another way that you can kind of find out and benchmark yourself when it comes to positioning and messaging. This one doesn't have a QR, but if you go to score.tgohq.com, you can take our May examination. And it takes 4 minutes. It's just a bunch of statements for you to agree or disagree with to certain extents. And then it will give you a report at the end of that, which shows you exactly where your current positioning is and where your frailties are in the areas that we've discussed today. But also, you know, just identifying the problems is one thing. I give you in that report a whole bunch of tips to help move you forward as well. So if you get the chance, go and take the May examination at score.tgohq.com. And then absolute lastly, if any of you have been compelled to do something about your positioning and want some advice, I'm more than happy to impart it. It's not a sales call. There's nothing that you can buy on this 15-minute positioning powwow. But if you fancy putting some time on my calendar to discuss anything that you've heard today, any ideas that you've got, or any ways in which you feel your messaging needs a bit of a dial-up, then again, you can scan that and get a positioning powwow booked with me. If you need a link for that or anything else, just comment, by the way. I know that not everybody's got their phone to hand or might even be watching this on a phone. So how do you scan? But in any case, that's all I've got for you today. There's my own contact details, Ben's details as well. And please do, if you haven't already, book a Zementum demo at zementum.com/demo. And I'll defer to Ben for a bit of additional flourish on that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt. I enjoyed the dry run this morning and even more information this afternoon. It's really got me thinking about how I do a bit of consulting work alongside what I do with Zementum. And it's got me really thinking about how do I better position that, nothing to do with being an MSP, but I work with MSPs and what can I do to better position myself? Yeah, and if you aren't using Zementum and you want a more compelling way to demonstrate to your prospects that you've got your shit together when it comes to the technology you use, if you want to be presenting better proposals, managing your pipeline better, putting really decent assessments and QBRs in front of them, book a Zementum demo. We'd love to show you what we do. Unless there are any other questions, we've got one more comment. Eric Wheeler, I'm an MSP account manager. Is that a Trend Micro? I think I may or may not have been stalking you on LinkedIn trying to work out who you were. Yes, MSP account manager is definitely going to utilize these points and resources and give you all credit. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Legendary session, Ben and Matt. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate that.
I'm grabbing that.
Nate,
good language, Nate.
Quick screenshot before it closes. Yeah, if there's anything either of us can do to help, feel free to reach out. I've got no objections to ending the session early and letting everyone have 12 minutes back. I'm with Trend. Right. Okay. So the other Eric is in fact, and Rami, right. Okay. So the various Erics are, I think, all Trend Micro people that he must have forwarded the info to. So I'm glad we got to the bottom of that one.
Fantastic.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining.